There's something terrifying about growing old. Not the wrinkles, not the gray hair, but the memories. The moments that replay in your mind at 2 a.m., the decisions you wish you could undo, the habits you didn't think mattered until they quietly destroyed everything. I'm 82 years old, and if there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Your life doesn't collapse in one big moment. It falls apart slowly, silently, through small daily habits you ignore. I remember a man I used to know. He always said, "I'll start tomorrow." Tomorrow, he would take care of his health. Tomorrow, he would fix his relationships. Tomorrow, he would chase his dreams. But tomorrow kept moving. Years passed. His body weakened. His relationships faded. His dreams died quietly inside him. And one day, he realized he had run out of tomorrows. That man was me. And today, I'm not here to motivate you. I'm here to warn you, because the habits I'm about to share, they don't look dangerous. They feel normal, comfortable, even harmless, but they are silently stealing your future, one day at a time. So if you're listening right now, don't just watch this video. Let it hit you. Let it shake you. Let it wake you up. And before we go further, take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Because one day, you might remember this moment and thank yourself for listening. Now, listen carefully, because if I could go back in time, I would stop these 9 habits immediately. 1. Waiting for the right time. I wasted years of my life waiting for the right time. I kept telling myself the same comforting lie. Not now, soon, when things settle down, when I'm more prepared, when everything feels perfect. I was always waiting for a moment that never came. I remember when I wanted to start something meaningful, something that truly mattered to me. But I delayed it. I thought I needed more knowledge, more money, more confidence. I watched others take action while I stood still, convincing myself I was being smart by waiting. But the truth? I wasn't being smart. I was being afraid. Afraid of failing. Afraid of being judged. Afraid of stepping into the unknown. So I hid behind the illusion of perfect timing. Years passed quietly, almost invisibly. The opportunity I once had, someone else took it. The energy I once had, it slowly faded. The courage I once felt, it weakened with every delay. And one day, I realized something that hit me like a punch to the chest. There is no perfect moment. Life doesn't pause and prepare the stage for you. It doesn't wait until you feel ready. It moves forward, with or without you. I've seen people with less talent, less knowledge, and fewer resources succeed, not because they were better, but because they didn't wait. They started when it was messy. They acted when it was uncomfortable. They moved when they were unsure. And me? I waited. I waited for clarity. I waited for confidence. I waited for certainty. But waiting didn't make things clearer. It only made my life smaller, because every day you wait, something silently slips away. Your time, your chances, your potential. And the most painful part? You don't notice it in the moment. It happens slowly, quietly, until one day you look back and realize you're standing in the same place while life has moved far ahead without you. Let me tell you something I wish someone had told me earlier. You don't become ready by waiting. You become ready by starting. Action creates clarity. Movement builds confidence. Mistakes create growth. But none of that happens while you sit and wait. If you keep telling yourself one day, that one day will turn into never before you even realize it. And the regret, it doesn't come from failure. It comes from inaction, from the chances you didn't take, the risks you avoided, the life you postponed. So if there's something inside you right now, something you've been delaying, don't wait for the perfect moment, because the moment you're waiting for is waiting for you to begin. 2. Ignoring my health while I still had it. I used to believe my body would always be there for me. When you're young, there's this dangerous illusion. You feel invincible. You wake up with energy, you recover quickly, You push your limits and nothing seems to break. So you start taking it for granted. You skip sleep, telling yourself it doesn't matter. You eat whatever is convenient, not what is right. You ignore small pains, brushing them off as nothing serious. You delay checkups thinking, I'm fine, I'll go later. I lived like that for years. I remember nights when I chose screens over sleep, days when I ignored exhaustion, moments when my body whispered for care, and I silenced it with excuses. Just one more day, I'll fix it later. It's not a big deal. But the truth is, your body keeps a record of everything. Every ignored warning, every bad habit, every moment you chose convenience over care. At first, the damage is invisible. You still function. You still move. You still feel okay. But slowly, something begins to change. Your energy drops. Your sleep becomes restless. Your body doesn't recover the way it used to. And then one day, it hits you, not as a small discomfort, but as something you can't ignore anymore. A diagnosis, a serious condition, a moment where your body simply refuses to cooperate. I still remember that feeling, sitting there, realizing that something I once controlled was now controlling me. And in that moment, all the excuses disappear, all the laters, all the it's not serious, all the neglect, they come back at once. But by then, it's too late to undo everything. That's the brutal truth no one wants to hear. Health doesn't collapse overnight. It fades, slowly, silently, while you're busy living your life as if it will always be there. And when it's gone, you would trade anything to get it back. Your money, your time, your comfort, everything. But some things don't come back the same way. I've seen people who spent their whole lives chasing success only to lose their health and realize nothing they achieved could replace what they lost. Because what is the point of success if your body is too weak to enjoy it? What is the point of wealth if you're constantly fighting pain? What is the point of life if you don't have the energy to live it? If you're listening to this right now and your body is still working for you, don't ignore that blessing. Because one day, you might wake up and realize the thing you neglected the most was the thing you needed the most. Take care of your body now, not when it breaks, not when it forces you, but while you still have the choice. Because once that choice is taken away, you will understand the true cost of ignoring your health. 3. Caring too much about what others think. I spent most of my life living inside other people's minds. Every decision, every step, every dream I had was filtered through one question: what will people say? Will they judge me? Will they laugh at me? Will they think I'm not good enough? And slowly, without realizing it, I stopped living my life and started performing for an invisible audience. I remember moments where I wanted to speak, but stayed silent. Opportunities where I wanted to try, but stepped back. Dreams that burned inside me, but I buried them just because I was afraid of opinions, afraid of criticism, afraid of rejection, afraid of being misunderstood. So I played safe. I chose what looked acceptable. I followed paths that others approved of. I became the version of myself that made people comfortable, but deep inside, I felt something was missing. Because when you live for others, you slowly lose yourself. And the scariest part? It doesn't feel like a big loss at first. It happens quietly. You adjust a little here, compromise a little there, until one day, you look in the mirror and don't even recognize the person staring back at you. I've seen people give up their passions just to avoid being judged. I've seen people stay in unhappy situations just to maintain an image. I've seen people shrink themselves just to fit into expectations that were never meant for them. And I was one of them. But here's the truth that hit me too late. The people you're trying so hard to impress are not thinking about you as much as you think. They are busy with their own fears, their own insecurities, their own lives. The same way you're worried about being judged, they're worried about being judged too. And the opinions you fear, they fade, they change, they disappear. But the life you didn't live, That stays. The words you didn't say, the risks you didn't take, the person you didn't become, those regrets don't leave you. They follow you. They sit with you in quiet moments. They echo in your mind when everything else is silent. And one day, you realize something painfully clear. You sacrificed your happiness for people who weren't even paying attention. You limited your life for opinions that didn't matter. You held yourself back for approval that was never worth it. And in the end, those people move on with their lives. They forget what you wore. They forget what you said. They forget what you did. But you remember everything. You remember the chances you didn't take, the life you could have lived, the version of yourself you were too afraid to become. So if you're still living like this, constantly thinking, what will people say? Let me tell you something honestly. People will always say something, no matter what you do, no matter how perfect you try to be. So if judgment is unavoidable, why not live life on your own terms? Because at the end of everything, when the noise fades, when the crowd disappears, when it's just you and your thoughts, the only opinion that will truly matter is your own. 4. Staying in the wrong relationships too long. I knew, deep down, that some people in my life were wrong for me. Not in an obvious, dramatic way, not in a way that made it easy to walk away, but in quiet, subtle moments. The way they spoke to me, the way they dismissed my feelings, the way I felt smaller every time I was around them. I saw the signs. I felt the discomfort. I noticed the red flags, but I stayed. I told myself stories to make it easier. Maybe they didn't mean it. Maybe they'll change. Maybe I'm overthinking. And the most dangerous one of all, I've already invested so much time, I can't leave now. So I stayed. Out of fear of being alone. Out of comfort because familiar pain felt safer than the unknown. Out of habit because leaving meant breaking a routine I had grown used to. I tolerated things I should have never tolerated. Disrespect that slowly chipped away at my self-worth. Silence where there should have been understanding. Distance where there should have been care. And the worst part? It didn't break me all at once. It happened slowly, piece by piece. You don't even realize when it starts. You laugh a little less. You speak a little less. You become a little less of yourself. Until one day, you don't recognize who you've become. I remember looking at myself and thinking, when did I start accepting this? When did this become normal? That's the trap. What you tolerate becomes your reality. And the longer you stay, the harder it becomes to leave. Because now, it's not just a relationship. It's a part of your identity, your routine, your comfort zone, your emotional dependency. I've seen people stay for years, even decades, hoping for change that never comes, waiting for apologies that are never sincere, hoping for effort that is never consistent, believing in a version of someone that only exists in their imagination. And I was one of them. But here's the painful truth I had to learn the hard way. Time doesn't fix the wrong people. Staying longer doesn't make them value you more. Loving harder doesn't make them treat you better. Sometimes it just makes you lose yourself more. And every extra day you stay is a day you're silently telling yourself, this is what I deserve, even when it's not, even when you know it's not. I wasted years hoping things would change, years giving chances, years making excuses, years ignoring my own pain. And those years, I can never get them back. That's what hurts the most. Not just the relationship, but the time I sacrificed for something that was never right. So listen to me carefully. If something feels wrong deep inside, don't ignore it. If someone consistently disrespects you, believe their actions. If you feel drained, small, or unappreciated, that's not love. That's a warning. Because sometimes the strongest thing you can do is not to hold on, but to let go. Yes, it will hurt. Walking away always does. It feels like losing something important. It feels like stepping into the unknown. It feels like breaking a part of your life. But staying slowly breaks you. And there's a difference. One pain heals, the other destroys. So choose carefully. Because one day, you don't want to look back and realize you spent years of your life fighting for a place where you were never truly valued. 5. Postponing happiness. I spent most of my life chasing a version of happiness that always seemed just a little ahead of me. I kept making quiet promises to myself. I'll be happy when I achieve this. I'll be happy when things finally settle down. I'll be happy later. And those words felt reasonable, responsible even. It felt like I was being patient, disciplined, focused. But what I didn't realize was this. I wasn't postponing happiness. I was denying it. I remember moments where I could have felt joy, simple, ordinary joy, sitting with family, but my mind was somewhere else, thinking about work, achieving something meaningful. But instead of celebrating, I immediately moved the target forward, reaching a goal I once dreamed of, only to feel empty because now there was another goal waiting. It was never enough, because every time I got close to happiness, I changed the condition. Not yet, just a little more. Then I'll relax. But then kept moving. Life has a strange way of doing that. You think once you reach a certain point, things will calm down. You think once you fix one problem, everything will fall into place. But life doesn't pause. New responsibilities come, new problems appear, new desires take over. And without realizing it, you become trapped in a cycle of almost happy, almost satisfied, almost at peace. I've seen people spend their entire lives like this, working endlessly, sacrificing everything, chasing success, stability, recognition, believing that one day it will all be worth it. But when that one day finally comes, they don't know how to feel happy anymore, because they've trained their minds to delay it, to condition it, to believe that happiness must be earned through struggle. And that's when it hit me. Happiness is not waiting for you at the finish line. There is no magical moment where everything suddenly feels complete, because even if you reach that moment, your mind will create another finish line, another reason to delay, another excuse to say, not yet. And one day, you look back at your life and realize something painful. You had moments to smile, but you were too busy. You had reasons to feel grateful, but you were too focused on what was missing. You had time to enjoy life, but you kept postponing it. You weren't living, you were preparing to live. That's the trap, and it's one of the most silent, dangerous habits of all, because it doesn't feel like a mistake. It feels like responsibility, but in reality, it slowly steals your ability to feel joy. Let me tell you something I learned too late. Happiness is not something you achieve. It's something you allow. It's in the small moments you keep ignoring, the quiet pauses you refuse to take, the present you keep sacrificing for a future that never arrives. If you keep saying later, later will turn into a lifetime, and at the end of it, you won't regret the things you didn't achieve as much as you'll regret the moments you didn't allow yourself to feel alive. So stop waiting, not for the perfect situation, not for everything to be in place, because life will never be perfect, but it is happening right now. And if you don't learn to feel happiness in this moment, you might spend your entire life chasing something that was always within your reach. 6. Being afraid to take risks. Fear controlled more of my life than I ever admitted. Not in obvious ways, not in ways that made me stop completely, but in quiet decisions, small hesitations, moments where I chose safety over possibility. I told myself I was being careful, responsible, practical, but the truth? I was afraid. Afraid of failing, afraid of looking foolish, afraid of losing what little I had. So I built a life around safety. I avoided risks. I stayed in familiar situations. I chose certainty, even when it made me unhappy. From the outside, it looked stable, but inside, there was always a voice, a quiet whisper asking, what if? What if I had tried? What if I had taken that chance? What if I had believed in myself just a little more? I remember a moment clearly. There was an opportunity in front of me, something that could have changed everything. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't guaranteed. It was uncertain, uncomfortable, risky, and I walked away, not because I couldn't do it, but because I was afraid of what might happen if I failed. Years later, I saw someone else take a similar path. They struggled. They failed at times. They faced criticism, but they kept going. And eventually, they built the life I once dreamed of. That moment stayed with me, not because I envied them, but because it forced me to confront a painful truth. The life I wanted was on the other side of the risks I refused to take. And I never reached it because I chose safety. That's the hidden cost no one talks about. When you play safe, you don't just avoid failure, you also avoid growth. You avoid opportunity. You avoid transformation. You avoid becoming the person you're capable of being. And at first, it feels comfortable. There's no embarrassment, no big losses, no public failures. But over time, that comfort turns into something else: regret. Because life doesn't reward those who always stay safe. It rewards those who are willing to step into uncertainty. And if you don't, you start collecting what-ifs. Not one or two, but dozens. What if I had started that thing I was passionate about? What if I had spoken up when it mattered? What if I had taken that chance when I had the time, the energy, the opportunity? These questions don't leave you. They stay. They grow louder in quiet moments, especially when you realize time is running out. And let me tell you something honestly. What if is not just a question. It's a weight, a heavy, invisible burden that follows you through life. Because deep down, you know the answer. You know what could have been. You know what you were capable of. And that's what hurts the most. Not the failures you experienced, but the ones you were too afraid to risk. I'm not saying every risk will lead to success. Some will fail. Some will hurt. Some will teach you hard lessons. But at least you'll know. At least you won't spend your life wondering. Because there are two types of pain in this world: the pain of failure and the pain of regret. One fades with time. The other stays forever. So if fear is holding you back right now, understand this. Fear doesn't disappear by waiting. It disappears by facing it. Take the step. Speak the truth. Try the thing that scares you. Because on the other side of that fear is a life you might never reach if you keep choosing to stay safe. 7. Neglecting the people who truly matter. I always believed I had time. Time to make that call. Time to visit them. Time to sit down and truly tell them how much they meant to me. There was always a later. I'll call them tomorrow. I'll meet them when things calm down. I'll spend time when I'm less busy. And those words felt harmless. After all, life gets busy, right? Responsibilities pile up. Work takes over. Days blur into weeks, and weeks into years. So I postponed. Not because I didn't care, but because I assumed those people would always be there. I remember moments so clearly now. A missed call I didn't return. A visit I kept delaying. A conversation I cut short because I had something important to do. At the time, it didn't feel like a big deal. But life doesn't announce when something is about to become the last time. The last call. The last meeting. The last chance. And that's what makes it so dangerous. Because when the moment passes, you don't even realize what you've lost. Until it's too late. I've seen people walk out of our lives without warning. Not always through death. Sometimes through distance, misunderstandings, or simply the way life changes people. One day, they are part of your everyday routine. And the next, they're just a memory. And that's when the regret begins. Not because you didn't love them, but because you didn't show it enough. Because you assumed there would always be another chance, another conversation, another visit, another moment. But there wasn't. I still carry certain memories with me. Moments where I had the chance to say more, to listen more, to be present. And I didn't. I thought I had time. That's the illusion we all live with. We think time is guaranteed. We act as if people will always be available when we finally decide to prioritize them. But time doesn't work that way. It moves quietly, unpredictably, without asking for permission. People leave. Situation change. Life rearranges everything when you least expect it. And one day, you find yourself wishing for something so simple. Just one more conversation, one more laugh, one more moment to say what you never said. But wishes don't bring moments back. That's the hardest truth. You don't regret the love you gave. You regret the love you held back. The words you didn't say, the time you didn't give, the presence you didn't offer, because deep down, you knew those people mattered. You just didn't act like it soon enough. So if there's someone in your life right now, someone you care about, someone who has been there for you, don't wait. Don't assume you'll have time later. Call them, visit them, sit with them without distractions. Tell them what they mean to you, even if it feels small or unnecessary. Because one day, it won't be unnecessary anymore. It will be everything. And you don't want to be in a place where you're holding memories instead of moments. Because sometimes, the most painful realization in life is this. You had the chance to show love, and you chose to wait. And in that waiting, later quietly became never. 8. Living on autopilot. I didn't realize when it started, that slow, silent shift from living to just existing. It didn't happen in one big moment. There was no warning, no dramatic change, just a routine. Wake up, go to work, eat, scroll, sleep, repeat. At first, it felt normal, even productive. I told myself, this is life. This is what responsible people do. But days started blending together. One day felt exactly like the next. Weeks passed without anything memorable. Months slipped by without a single moment that truly stayed with me. And the scariest part? I didn't even notice it happening. I was moving, but not progressing. I was busy, but not fulfilled. I was alive, but not really living. I remember trying to recall what I had done the past few months, and there was nothing. No vivid memories, no meaningful experiences, no moments that made me feel truly alive. Just a blur. That's what autopilot does. It doesn't destroy your life all at once. It quietly steals it. You stop questioning things. You stop trying new experiences. You stop growing because everything becomes predictable, comfortable, and dangerous. I've seen people spend decades like this, following the same routine, repeating the same patterns, telling themselves they'll live properly someday. But someday never comes, because the routine becomes your life. I remember knowing deep inside that something was missing. There was a voice, quiet but persistent, asking, is this it? Is this all life is going to be? But I ignored it, because stepping out of autopilot is uncomfortable. It requires awareness. It requires change. It requires you to face the possibility that you've been wasting time. So I stayed in the loop, day after day, year after year, until one day, something hit me hard. I realized I couldn't clearly remember large parts of my life. Think about that. Years gone. Not because they didn't happen, but because I wasn't truly present in them. I wasn't creating memories. I was just going through motions. That's when the fear set in. Not the fear of failure, not the fear of loss, but the fear of reaching the end of my life and having nothing meaningful to look back on. Because in the end, life is not measured by how many days you lived. It's measured by how many days you actually felt alive. Autopilot robs you of that. It keeps you distracted, occupied, and comfortable, while your time quietly disappears. You stop noticing sunsets. You stop appreciating conversations. You stop feeling the depth of moments. Everything becomes routine. And routine, when left unchecked, turns into regret. Because one day, you wake up, not physically, but mentally, and you realize something terrifying. You were here all this time, but you weren't really living. You don't remember the laughter. You don't remember the details. You don't remember the moments that make life worth it, because you didn't create them. And that's when it hits the hardest. You didn't lose your life in a tragedy. You lost it in repetition. So if you're living the same day over and over again, If your life feels like a loop you never questioned, stop, pause it, look around. Ask yourself honestly, am I living or just existing? Because if you're not careful, this routine will continue. Days will turn into months, months into years, and one day you'll wake up with a heart full of emptiness and a past full of blank spaces. Not memories, not moments, just time that passed. And nothing hurts more than realizing you were given a life and you spent it on autopilot. 9. Believing there's still plenty of time. This was the most dangerous lie I ever told myself. There's still plenty of time. It sounds harmless, comforting even. It gives you permission to relax, to delay, to not act right now. I'll start tomorrow. I'll fix it later. I'm not in a hurry. And I believed it. For years, I lived as if time was something I had control over, as if it would always be there, waiting patiently for me to catch up. I postponed things that mattered. Dreams I wanted to pursue, I delayed them. People I wanted to spend time with, I kept saying later. Changes I needed to make, I pushed them into the future. Because in my mind, there was always more time. But here's the truth no one tells you. Time doesn't feel like it's running out until it already has. It doesn't come with a warning. No alarm. No message saying, this is your last chance. It just moves, quietly, unnoticed. I remember looking back one day and feeling something I can't fully describe. It wasn't fear. It was something deeper. The realization that so much time had passed and I hadn't done the things I thought I would. Years gone, not wasted in one big mistake, but in small delays. I'll do it tomorrow. I'll start next week. I'll get serious next year. Those small sentences, they seem insignificant in the moment, but repeated daily, they become your life. That's how time disappears. Not in dramatic events, but in quiet postponements. I've seen people who always said, there's still time, only to reach a point where time became their biggest regret. Dreams left unfinished, words left unspoken, lives half-lived. And the most painful part? They didn't fail because they couldn't do it. They failed because they thought they had more time than they actually did. I was one of them. I thought I could always start later, that I could always fix things later, that I could always become better later. But later is a dangerous place, because later slowly turns into never, and you don't even realize when the shift happens. Opportunities pass, energy fades, circumstances change, and one day, you find yourself looking at your life, wondering where all the time went. That's when it hits the hardest. Not like a loud explosion, but like a quiet, heavy truth settling in your chest. You didn't lose your life in one big moment. You lost it in small, repeated delays. Every time you said, not today. Every time you chose comfort over action. Every time you believed you had more time. You were slowly giving your life away. That's the reality. And it's painful, because once time passes, it doesn't come back. You can regret it. You can think about it. You can wish for another chance. But you can't relive it. So if you're listening to this right now, don't fall into the same trap. Don't let the illusion of plenty of time fool you, because time is not guaranteed. It's limited, unpredictable, fragile. And the scariest part? You don't know how much of it you have left. So stop waiting. Stop delaying. Stop telling yourself later. Because the moment you keep postponing might be the one that matters the most. And if you keep pushing everything into the future, one day you'll find yourself standing in a place where there is no future left to fix it. Only a past filled with chances you didn't take, and a truth that will stay with you forever. You had time, but you treated it like you didn't need it.